Teaching is hard work, even on the best of days. But it is even that much harder when students don't seem to care about what they are learning. Benjamin Franklin said, "Want of care does us more damage than want of knowledge." He summarized how important it is to teachers that their students both care and learn. The level of concern students demonstrate is good for them and their teachers. Welcome to Part 6 of Increasing Their Motivation. In this podcast, you will learn what level of concern is and how level of concern can increase or decrease motivation. You will also learn what a teacher can do to raise or lower the level of concern in the classroom. How do teachers know whether or not their students care? On the old-time variety shows, MCs used applause meters to measure how much the audience preferred one performer over another. In the classroom, however, there are no care meters to indicate how much each student cares. And Albert Einstein may have given us good advice when it comes to trying to determine how much our students care. Einstein once said, "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." Do you suppose he was talking about how much students care about their learning? His point is an important one for classroom teachers to remember. Caring counts, but can it be counted? Throughout the course of education, many teachers have ignored Einstein's advice and tried to use 3 different external factors to count how much students care. Educational researcher Rick Wormeli tells us that often these measurements of how much students care became part of the teacher's grading structure, even though there were logical and ethical questions about the practice of including them. Some teachers counted a student's effort in class as an indication of how much he or she cared. Wormeli had both logical and ethical concerns about this practice. He asked, "Do we have a commonly accepted, legally justifiable, non-subjective method for measuring how hard someone is working? We do not have an accurate yardstick for effort. Declaring the extent and impact of students' efforts with authority can be difficult to defend." Some teachers counted a student's behavior as an indication of how much he or she cared. Here again, Wormeli finds logical and ethical concerns. He says, "In the past, I've been an absolute stickler for handing in work on time. I had in my mind that I was promoting excellence by doing that. Over time, I realized I was sending the message that timeliness was more important than learning. There are many deadlines that I miss for paperwork and the like, simply because I'm too busy or something came up that needed to be attended to first. That is real life." Finally, some teachers counted a student's attendance as an indication of how much he or she cared. Wormeli had logical and ethical concerns with that practice as well. He said, "If the grade represents the number of days students attend school, it can no longer be used to accurately document mastery. Sure, some schools, particularly high schools, use the lure of passing grades to get students in danger of dropping out to attend class. For instance, some have a policy that 3 unexcused absences from a class results in an automatic F. While this keeps some would-be class skippers from checking out early every day, the F may or may not be an accurate portrayal of the student's mastery of course content." Like Wormeli, other experts on grading practices, Robert Marzano, Thomas Guskey, Ken O'Connor, Dylan Willem, and Rick Stiggins, to name a few, are encouraging today's teachers to recognize that using grades to try to make students care about learning may or may not be a good idea. Wormley explains why. It may come as a surprise to some, but low grades push students farther from our cause. They don't motivate students. Recording a D on a student's paper won't light a fire under that student to buckle down and study harder. It actually distances the student farther from us and the curriculum, and lessens the level of investment the student had prior to receiving the low grade. Given this, imagine a student earning a string of low grades. How motivated will he or she be? High grades also have issues. Alfie Kohn says that high grades have a little bump in motivation. Students who earn an A want to earn another one. This is short-lived, according to Kohn, works only on the part of some students, and is extrinsic, so it doesn't help students' intent to learn and achieve success in the future. If teachers cannot rely on effort, behavior, and attendance as accurate measures of how much students care, what can they use? Educational consultant Carol Cummings reminds us that our own personal experience tells us the most reliable evidence of caring is internal. Have you ever admitted having a case of butterflies in your stomach? She asks. Having butterflies in your stomach is internal evidence of how much you care, and it's symptomatic of a variable of motivation called level of concern. In her 1986 book, Teaching Makes a Difference, Carol Cummings defines level of concern. Level of concern, the fear of losing something that you need or want, for example, status, success, esteem, self-esteem, will motivate improved performance. But she gives us a caution as well. Level of concern is just like medication when you're sick. Without it, you won't get any better. With too much, you'll be really sick. Only the right dosage lets you get well. Like many of the variables of motivation, level of concern exists on a continuum. At one end is no concern, and at the other end is too much concern, with moderate concern in the middle. The continuum clearly shows that in this case amount really matters. With no concern, there is no motivation. But with too much concern comes an inability to concentrate on the task. In fact, if the level of concern stays too high for a prolonged period of time, the human brain actually shuts down cognitive function. What can a teacher say to impact the level of concern? Let's suppose we are listening in on a health teacher's class as she talks to her students about an upcoming report. The level of concern will be very low if she says, "John, take as much time as you'd like to finish your health report. It's not going to be graded anyway." There will be a moderate level of concern if she says, "Carrie, you'll have 1 week to finish your health report. I'll be checking with you each day, though, to see how far along you are. There will be a high level of concern if she says, Mike, get this health report done by tomorrow, and I'm going to base your grade for the entire class on how well you do on it. What teachers say will impact the level of concern in the classroom. If there are 3 levels of concern, which is best in most cases? Renowned educational expert Madeline Hunter tells us that the guiding principle is clear. Moderate levels of concern stimulate efforts to learn. In her 1982 book, Mastery Learning, she explained why. She said, "In the past we believed that stress or concern was undesirable. Now we know that a moderate level of concern is essential to an individual's putting forth effort. If you are satisfied with your appearance, job, or where you live, you will not put forth effort to change it. It is only when you become concerned that you will do something." It is vital for teachers to remember that prolonged exposure to high levels of concern is actually dangerous. Brain researcher Pat Wolf explains how excessive stress takes both a physical and mental toll on learners. She says, if you have no stress in your life, you probably won't get out of bed in the morning. If you have too much stress in your life, chances are you won't get out of bed in the morning. As with many things in life, more is not necessarily better, especially when it comes to the stress response. The stress response was designed for life in caves, but we don't live there anymore. The contemporary human brain doesn't distinguish between actual physical danger and psychological danger. It sets the same set of physiological chain of events in motion in either case. The blood pressure goes up, blood clotting elements are released into the bloodstream, the immune system is suppressed, and cortisol and adrenaline are released to increase the flight or fight response and decrease thinking. If you want to see the effects of excessive stress on students, watch those who are being bullied or laughed at, those who are uncomfortable about performing in public, those who are taking timed tests, those who are called on when not prepared, and those who have a general fear of failure. Wolf tells us the human brain is hardwired to react negatively to prolonged high levels of concern. What can teachers do to raise or lower the levels of concern? This scale illustrates that efforts to raise or lower concern are different sides of the same coin. Teachers are wise to remember that opposite actions yield opposite results. If you want to lower the level of concern, give more time. If you want to raise it, give less time. If you want to lower the level of concern, give more help. If you want to raise it, give less help. If you want to lower the level of concern, give students more resources. If you want to raise the level of concern, give them less resources. If you want to lower the level of concern, give formative assessments. If you want to raise the level of concern, use summative assessments. If you want to lower the level of concern, have low-stakes test results. If you want to raise the level of concern, use high-stakes test results. If you want to lower the level of concern, do not ask students for public display. If you want to raise the level of concern, require public display. If you want to lower the level of concern, have little accountability for the work students do. If you want to raise the level of concern, have high accountability. If you want to lower the level of concern, use more wait time with your questions. If you want to raise the level of concern, use less wait time. If you want to lower the level of concern, establish less teacher proximity. If you want to raise the level of concern, use more teacher proximity. If you want to lower the level of concern, have less challenging content. If you want to raise the level of concern, have more challenging content. This slide does illustrate an important principle of motivation. What teachers say and do clearly controls the level of concern in the classroom. If you are beginning to understand the variable of motivation called level of concern, ask yourself how using the following teaching strategies might let you control students' level of concern in the classroom. Increasing support for learning by building more time, resources, and help into the conditions of your objective. Giving students high visibility and low visibility options for how they do presentations in your classroom. Checking class notes regularly. Requiring a ticket out from each student to account for learning at the close of a lesson. Providing do-over options for high-stakes learning assessments. Building a strong plan that combines frequent formative and reasonable summative assessment in your classroom. Moving throughout the classroom to increase or decrease proximity to students as needed. What have you learned? If you can answer the 4 questions in this concept test, you are well on your way to figuring out how you can use level of concern to improve motivation and performance in your classroom. Number 1, how would you define level of concern? Number 2, what level of concern is most conducive to increasing a student's intent to learn? Explain why that is true. Number 3, name 3 ways a teacher can lower the level of concern in the classroom, and explain how you use those ways in your classroom. Number 4, name 3 ways a teacher can raise the level of concern in the classroom, and explain how you use those ways in your classroom. Now that you know more about level of concern, which variable of motivation will you study next? Open any of the remaining podcasts, to learn more about increasing their motivation.